Good evening and welcome to Psychic Coffee Shop. I'm Aeson, and of course, I'm sitting down with Megan tonight. We're going to be discussing your healing work and your ducks. And honey, if you could fit anything else on your plate, how else could you?
I'd have to get a bigger plate.
Yes,
but I think they make them bigger, don't they?
I don't know. I think that we're both up to serving sizes. If they go any bigger than that, I'm not exactly like, I need to move to Mars so I can have a 36-hour day.
I just need about 2 more of me. If I had 2 more me's that could do all the things. I
love that idea.
Right? Yeah,
right.
That's what I need. Yeah, an assistant that I don't have to explain anything to about what I do.
No. Right. We can just start you can vibe with them, and it's like, I need you to go write some blogs. You can hop onto social media. I'm going to go over here and meditate for the 2 hours that, all these spiritual-minded people tell us we're supposed to do.
Well, I'd have to actually have one of the me's do the meditating because I can't sit still that long.
Really?
Really.
Wow. Yeah. So tell me about the beginning of your journey. How did you get into healing and working with energies and herbs?
Oh, gosh. It's my whole life, actually. I was born into it.
Okay.
I come from a foraging family, and for those who aren't familiar with that term, I grew up in a family where we went out into the forest, or we went out to the beach or the fields, and we collected food. We collected wild berries or seaweed or clams or oysters or mushrooms and wild herbs. And my parents were real foodies. My mother had a real Asian influence. She spent a year in China when she was in university. My dad was always an outdoorsman. So there was this great fusion as I was growing up of all of these amazing foods. Nothing was processed. So I grew up with this appreciation for how food can be so powerful as a healer. And then how I got into healing, I was the kid that picked up the worms after the rainstorms and put them back on the soggy ground. Saved the birds, saved the cats, brought home stray creatures to my parents, stood up for the stood up to the bullies, on the playground. So I grew up always looking after people. And then, to be completely honest, after so many times where people had stopped me in the grocery line or in the bank lineup or on the bus and told me their entire life story, which I was somehow able to help them with, it occurred to me, oh, why am I doing this for free? I could be getting paid to do this kind of work. And so I started to look into, how does that happen? How does one get paid to be a psychic or paid to be a healer? Or how can one be a psychic healer? And bringing the two together, because I didn't just want to let people know about stuff that they might not be conscious of that was in their energy field. I wanted to assist and support them on healing all the things in their lives that needed healing. So there were more healed people than unhealed people, which of course I haven't achieved yet because there's a lot of us on the planet, but that's the goal.
Right. And there's a lot of unhealed people that don't get the connection that the body echoes the mind echoes the spirit echoes the connection. And it's this overlapping thing that can start out with just a bad thought or old tape, and then it echoes all the way through your body.
Absolutely. And it's not something that we're taught. And because we're not taught to trust our intuition, and because we're not taught that we're a psychic species, we don't trust what we know is the best thing for us, whatever is in our highest good. We're just simply not, generally speaking, taught how to do that. My upbringing was a little different because I was taught to listen to my dreams. My mother she'd sit me down at breakfast in the morning and say, what were your dreams last night? And we'd talk about our dreams. And I felt comfortable in the natural world. I felt comfortable in the forest. I felt safe. So I was open to the healing energies that are there naturally in nature. But I know that's not everyone's experience. And so people need help. That's what I'm here to do.
Right. And that's what you do really well. You're a master healer and, to also foraging expert. Is foraging as easy as it used to be? Like, where are we on that on the planet?
That's a really great question. Is it as easy as it used to be? I think I think a lot more people used to forage because it was just a way of life. I mean, there were no grocery stores, so foraging wasn't a fancy thing that you did. You went out and you got your food where you could find it. Nowadays, with the forests getting cut down, with cities expanding, it is a little less easy, I think, to get to the places where you would need to get to in order to have really clean, natural foods and things that you could forage. I also think that over the last 100 years, the knowledge that we have that we can trust the natural world has been suppressed quite intentionally, to the point where most people don't even realize that the herbs that they're buying perhaps fresh at the grocery store, they could very easily be growing on their deck or in their backyard, and that there's medicine in those plants.
And not only is there medicine, there's less processization, there's less, and you don't have to have a 90-acre. I think we also get told that the bullshit story.
Which one?
What I mean by that, you got to have 40 acres.
Right. No, you don't. No. You don't. You just need to know where to go in your environment. And it's easy for me for where I live. I live in Victoria, which is in Canada on the west coast, southern part of Vancouver Island. And we live in a fairly small city. I mean, it's rapidly expanding and densificating and all that kind of stuff. But still, we've got mountains, we've got forests, we've got beaches. I live two blocks from the beach. I can go down and harvest seaweed if I want to. Somebody who's living in the middle of a big American city or even a big Canadian city, it's not as easy to get to those wild places. But then that's why we have urban foraging.
Right. And, but I have to say, you guys have, Canada has a little bit easier. Because I was in Canada probably about 9 or 10 years ago, and the host and me went to the grocery store, and I was surprised. Like, I'm used to grocery store. We have a little tiny produce section, and everything else is in cans and frozen. In Canada, half that store was fresh.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize there was such a difference.
Yeah, there's a major difference. Like, that you guys have more, like, you can get, and I know this may seem weird, but like, there are like huge pieces of ginger, and I'm like, who could eat that much ginger?
That's so interesting.
I
just dried a bunch of ginger yesterday because I bought a whole bunch of ginger.
Right.
And I dried it, and I'm going to powder it, and I'm going to use it in my cooking or in my tea.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But, I think the U.S. has a little harder time when it gets to fresh in the store, or, staying on the perimeter of the store, because now they started cluttering the perimeter of the store with crap.
Yes.
Granted, I live in West Virginia. There are berries all season. There are, of course, if you want to hunt, you can hunt. There's a lot of meat out there to hunt. You can fish. You can go and gather and that type of thing, which is great. But we get into dangerous territories when we get to mushrooms. Be an expert. Don't read a book. Go with someone.
Yes. Go with someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go have that experience. Go get with those grannies out there. And I think that you begin to see a difference in the food.
Yes.
Surprisingly stronger.
And it's interesting as you're saying this, I'm remembering a number of articles that I've read or documentaries that I've seen talking about the food deserts in major American cities, where there is no place to go to get fresh food.
Right.
And what was so wonderful about that, these articles I was reading, is that what they were saying is that because the human being has this urge, this desire, this yearning for fresh food, citizens are taking it into their own hands, and they're converting abandoned lots and abandoned parking lots and abandoned buildings into inner city gardens where they're growing their own food. They're remembering that they can do that. And I love that. That just fills me with such hope for the direction that we're going in.
Right. And it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be a lot. It can just be a tomato, 6 pepper plants and a tomato plant introduces, I think, enough into your diet, cuts down on your budget, and enables you to have a little bit more confidence. And then maybe you do some potatoes. Maybe you start learning to pair the vegetables together.
Absolutely. Or you join a community garden. If you are one of those if you're I won't say unfortunate people, if you live in a building where there are no balconies, which seems to be the way of the buildings these days, having a balcony garden isn't possible for you. But then find those community gardens, because they do exist,
right,
and participate in them. And that's how you're going to live longer, live better, live healthier. You can create a little mini blue zone in your own neighborhood.
right. And, you know, if you got rooftop, if you got windows, you know, my grandmother used to grow sweet potatoes in her kitchen window, and they would get to be huge. And it's just, you know, because she lived in a trailer. So, of course, she didn't have a lot of land. But she would, you know, grow a tomato plant in a pot and a pepper plant in a pot. You have house plants, make them eatable.
Yes, exactly. You know, and pretty much everything, okay, not everything, pretty much many things are edible that people may not necessarily consider or have been taught differently. Right? I mean, we're speaking about mushrooms.
Right.
In North America, many people are microbiophobic. So they're afraid of mushrooms. They've been taught that mushrooms are dangerous. Only eat the little white button mushrooms in the grocery store, if that, but otherwise stay away from them all. But in Europe, mushrooms are they're part of daily living. Like people just know what are mushrooms that are edible, what are mushrooms that are tasty, and what are mushrooms that are medicinal. And then some of those mushrooms that we just stay away from, you know.
Right.
But the more that we study the mushrooms, the more we're understanding the medicinal components of them and appreciating how having mushrooms in our daily lives, even the button mushrooms that you get in some grocery stores, they all have medicine, just like food, like all good food does. And by having that on a daily basis, you're improving your whole health, your brain health, your metabolic health, your central nervous system, your intuition, your whole body is better when it's getting food as medicine rather than a pharmaceutical as medicine.
Right. So we're not exactly sure what all the extra white powder in that pill is, but, you know, we'll go with it. Yeah. But, you know, the other thing here is, you know, there's a lot of hoopla going on in your area, in your field, because I'm not an energy healer. I'm not a medicine person. I will say I have great medical training to take care of you after a doctor has seen you. I am not, however, a medical professional. A lot of buzz is coming out now about adrenals. What's your thoughts there?
Oh, okay. So we have adrenal glands. They're attached to our kidneys. Our kidneys work really hard to clear our body of toxins. That's why we pee. You know, that's the liquid part of toxins coming out of our body. People talk about adrenal fatigue, and then they target the adrenals. And you can do that with herbs, and you can do it with essential oils. But that's actually not a whole lot different than targeting it with synthetic medications, in that you're still not addressing why your adrenals are not healthy. Right. So whether you're doing it naturally by herbs and food, or you're doing it medicinal, like medically with prescription drugs, if you're not asking the most important question, which is why am I fatigued? Then you're not going to solve the problem no matter what you throw at it.
Right. It's like, you know, oh, my sugar's up. Well, I'll just pop another metformin and we'll shoot some insulin, whatever, instead of going, why is my sugar up? What am I eating that's pissing my sugar, you know, my pancreas off? And that's a whole new thought process when we look at medicine.
Yes, that's true. And especially in Western medicine, our doctors are not taught to ask those kinds of curious questions. You know, at least in my experience over the last, I would say, 2 decades of being in hospitals, advocating for my family members, advocating for my clients, and in my own experiences, I've had 17 surgeries in my life. First one when I was 5 years old. So I have a long history with being in the mix of all that medical system. Very rarely have I come across a curious doctor who has said, so what's going on with you? Like, how are you? Not, does that hurt? But what's going on for you? I've had one doctor in 55 years who said,
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually care what you came in here with, because that's not the problem.
Right.
The problem is you and what you're not doing to support yourself.
Right.
That was devastating to hear, by the way.
Oh, I bet. Like,
yeah.
Okay, I have what I call the super doc. The reason is he's the super doc is I went through 56 different doctors before before I found one that would even see me.
Wow.
You know, I have 7 herniated discs, overwork, living in West Virginia, being a nurse, evidently cause of it.
Mm.
And he's like, so what do you need to manage?
Right.
And it's like, well, this is what I need to manage. I need to be able to be functional and not blazed out of my head.
Right.
And he's like, huh? And I'm like, here's the rules. You are not allowed to give me anything that will knock me out. If it knocks me off, it goes out of here. I don't want none of the narcotics. I don't want none of the, I just gave him a whole list. And he's like, so you basically want aspirin and a muscle relaxer. I said 2 notches above aspirin so it doesn't piss my liver off.
But did he get curious about why you needed those things? Okay.
Yeah. He was curious about, like, how do you have 7 herniated discs? That's not supposed to happen. I was like, 120 hours of overtime. 79 patients and 3 deadlifts.
Yeah.
We'll talk about I can't share the rest of it because of confidentiality. But he's like, oh, yeah, you've done there's a reason there. So when are we doing surgery? I said, we're not. But it's that interacting with him, and he's like, okay, what do you want versus this is what I need you to do.
Yeah. So he had curiosity, and he had, I would say, like an intuitive sense of your overall health picture, and then the steps that could be taken, that you could choose to take if you wanted to address the circumstances and make changes.
Right. And I get a prescription of, all right, you're joining a gym. You've got to lose this amount of weight. And that's not the prescription that 95% of doctors would have walked out with.
100% right. Can I share something with you that I went through very recently? Okay. So I look after my aunt, and one of the many things that I do that is probably not on the list of things you have in front of you is that I have a business called House Help, where I go into people's homes and I do a holistic support of them. So my aunt is one of my clients. She has Parkinson's. She also has bipolar medication. So she's on levodopa for the Parkinson's. Every 2 hours for 12 hours a day. So 6 or 7 doses a day, right? Of the levodopa, and then the other medications. And she kept having these dementia-like episodes where she would lose her mobility and she would lose her cognitive functioning. And what we were told by her neurologist and by her GP is that this was the natural progression of Parkinson's. This is the natural progression of the disease. And I said, no. Intuitively, I know that that's not true. What my intuition was telling me and what my learning was telling me is that something was going on with those medications. First of all, she was way over-medicated, which most people are in the Western world, very over-medicated. Then you've got all the side effects of these medications, just the single medications and all their side effects. But then you start putting them together, and now you've got a whole host of other medication or side effects. What would happen was she would end up in hospital with a full-blown case of dementia, and we'd be told, this is it. She's in long-term care. There's nothing more you can do for her. And I would say to the doctors, let's get her medically stable. Every 2 hours on the nose, she's got to have her levodopa. And within a few weeks, she would start to rally. And then within about 6 weeks, she was completely functional again, moving, cognitive. It's taken 3 of these episodes for her doctors and the doctors in the hospital to consider the possibility that the reason that all of this was happening to her was because she wasn't taking her medications properly, and
Right.
that some of the medications she had been taking for 16 or more years, she'd been on these medications, could maybe be adjusted just a little bit. Right?
Okay.
That's what it took. It took her going into these crises. And thank goodness she had me there to ask the questions that she couldn't ask because she couldn't even feed herself. She was in such a bad state, and advocate for her. And some of the people on her team have said to me, since we've now got her adjusted and back on her feet again, that they now look at their patients differently. The older patients who come in presenting as if they have dementia or Alzheimer's, they're starting to look at their medications to see if maybe it's the medications that are the problem,
Right.
and not whatever the disease is that they've been diagnosed with. And interestingly, in my aunt's case, all of the medications she's on, including the levodopa, which is the only medication that we have right now for Parkinson's, causes Parkinson's, causes Parkinson's-like symptoms. So when you start to look at the bigger picture, and this is where I guess like intuitive medical intuition comes in, you look at that bigger picture, and you look at our health crisis, and you look at all the prescriptions, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to put the pieces together and realize that at the basis of the health crisis that we are experiencing in North America is, or whatever the grammar is, the medications and the way in which they are being overprescribed and given at the wrong dosing, and that no one's curious to ask if this is actually working or not. Like, is it actually helping the client?
Well, and I totally agree with that. The other part is, I think we have a health desert in a lot of America.
Right.
In America, especially. Now, Canada, you guys have a wonderful healthcare system. It has its issues. I get that. I understand that. But you have one.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's under attack right now.
America's very different. Really?
It is over the last 5 years, as the world imploded, a lot of cracks showed up in our system up here, and a lot of good people lost their careers, lost their jobs because they were speaking differently than what they were being told to speak about certain things, and so we have a very understaffed medical system here in Canada now on every level.
Right.
Doctors, nurses,
well, and
yeah.
I have to say this, with what we went through, I'm not surprised that we don't have a lot of understaffment, because we burnt some of those nurses out. Totally.
Yeah.
You know, the rate to leave bedside is insane.
Yeah. And before all that happened, many of my clients who were coming to me were burnt out nurses and health professionals who knew by working in the system that the system wasn't going to be able to help them with what they needed help with, unless it was going to be a pill. But if what they wanted was to change their lives, that support isn't there. And having gone through 17 surgeries in my life, and I've been in very critical conditions and so forth, thank goodness for the medical system, or else I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you. I would have died in childbirth twice. I would have died on the operating table a couple of times. There's various reasons that I wouldn't be here right now. So in an emergency situation, when the need to respond and react is at its greatest, our medical teams are amazing. Preventative medicine, holistic medicine, lifestyle medicine, natural medicine, food as medicine.
I think they're still learning.
There's a learning.
I think they're still learning, and I also think there's a world that exists where all of it works together, and you're given the options of like, okay, you can either continue taking these muscle relaxers, these painkillers, this, or you can decrease your intake of gluten, sugar, and white flour. Your choice, or let's try both.
Yes. Yeah. Well, choice is fundamental in all of that. I mean, choice should be available in everything. And part of the
Right.
reason why we lost so many good health practitioners over the last 5 years is because they weren't given choice.
Right.
And I mean, so they chose to walk away because the other option wasn't something they wanted to do. And they felt really strongly about
Right.
that, as many of us did. Choice is fundamental, and
Right.
and we need to be taught how to make choices when we're growing up. So
Right.
that
And I don't think that we are.
I don't think we are either. I agree. I know that my little nephew, he's just turned 5. When he was much younger, about 3, he was visiting with me, and I gave him a choice. Would you like this or that for dinner or something like that? And his mom, my sister, looked at me and she said, "Don't offer him a choice." It's like, why not? I want to teach him that there are choices, and I want to teach him how to make a choice, or that it's okay to make a choice. But she was really adamant, and it took me back. I was surprised. My daughter grew up always being given a choice. 1 or 2 choices, not like 1,000, not like walking into the grocery store. You've got 90 different kinds of laundry detergent to choose from. But to make a choice, because being able to make a choice empowers us. Right? It gives us that empowerment. It gives us a sense of self. And it actually lights up the part of our brain that is the decision-making part of our brain. And for a lot of people, I think that part of the brain is atrophied because they just do
agree.
Told, and they don't think critically about what they're doing and ask any questions about it.
Right. So you've said you've advocated for your clients. What does that look like?
It looks like me being present when they are with their doctors or going into the hospital for any reason, being there for their appointments. It's also, for me, about educating them. Let's say they give me their list of medications, and I'll go do my research, and I'll be looking at the same websites the doctors are looking at, and I'm finding all of the research that's been done on that medication, the list of side effects, many of which are no longer in the pamphlets when a person receives a prescription anymore, and the interactions that are possible. And then I will bring that information to my client to say, here, it's really important that you understand what you're saying yes to when you get that prescription filled, so that you can make a choice for yourself. Is this, does the cost ratio and the benefit ratio make sense to you? Or are the list of side effects more damaging to you than what you're dealing with? And then can we find another way to help you to deal with it? Or you do choose to take the medication, but let's be smart about it. Right. So it's those sorts of ways that I advocate for my clients in that circumstance and situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't go, okay, well, he's prescribing blood pressure medicine. Let's start you on 2 cups of ginger tea instead.
I will say he's prescribing blood pressure medication. Let's look at why you have high blood pressure, first of all. I want to know the events and the experiences that have allowed the body to show up with the symptoms, right?
Okay.
And then once I have an understanding of that, of the basis of it, so when I work with my clients, I start with the story. What is the story that they're telling me? And I listen for the words that they're using and the intonation of their voice and what they're getting triggered by or what they're stuck on. The symptoms are not the problem. The symptoms are the body crying out for help, trying to get our attention, right? So before we have the ginger tea and before we decide whether or not to take the high blood pressure medication, I want to help them understand where this is coming from and why it's showing up for them.
Okay.
As I said before, if we don't look at the source, we're not going to heal. We might mask the symptoms. We might put a Band-Aid on them. We might add more symptoms if we get side effects. So I would rather learn what happened 5 years ago, what happened 10 years ago, what happened in childhood, what happened in another lifetime. That could be the basis, the foundation for what's showing up physically, whether that's illness or injury.
Okay.
And then start working with what can we add to or take out of the way that the person is living their lives.
You brought up what happened in a past life. How does that affect? Or how does that apply?
Well, it's helpful to understand the concept of past lives, which I'm sure many of your audience do, and to have a belief in it, whether it can be verified or not, proven or not. It's the idea for me that there's so much to experience in any one lifetime. Like there's so much to experience in a lifetime. It's not enough to just have one life. there's just too many amazing experiences that we have as a human being, right? And so because our lives in the physical form are finite, there's only so much we can do. There's only so much we can heal. There's only so much we can understand, and there's only so much we can evolve in any given lifetime. So I believe that what the soul does is it makes a plan. It creates a plan with its team in the non-corporeal world, and says, okay, here's the things that I didn't quite figure out, learn from, build on, understand, or feel in this particular lifetime. So I'm going to bring some of that into this new life that I'm about to have. Because in this new life, there's going to be opportunities that didn't exist in the previous life that are uniquely situated to help me with that thing. Right. So let's say it's a health issue. Let's say you were King Henry VIII in a past life, and you died a huge man with massive coronary issues and gout and an injury on your leg that would never heal. You died like that.
Right.
Let's say you then choose a new lifetime, and in this lifetime you're going to be the fittest guy ever. You're going to be an Olympic athlete. That's the path you've chosen for yourself, which is great. And in that being an Olympic athlete, maybe you're going to take too many steroids, or maybe you're going to allow yourself to be born with a weak heart. So the problems are still going to be there. The challenges are still going to be there. And maybe you don't have enough magnesium or enough zinc in your diet, so your wounds aren't going to heal properly. But you're being born in the 20th century, where we have the internet, where we have a lot of information that wasn't available in Henry VIII's time. And you have a different mindset. So you start using the resources that are available to you in this lifetime to help heal the issues that you couldn't heal in that previous lifetime that you've brought in. So that's one of the ways that we can